What's up, guys? Leland and Tim here with Bomb Table Tyrants, and we wanted to go through some ideas we were coming up with about making good villains in Vampire the Masquerade, and also some more dark themes that we could throw at you. I know I threw a few in a video a few weeks ago, but we have more, and we want to go over some of the ones that Tim has because turns out his ideas are way better than mine, and we want to get his thoughts on the table. So I'm gonna let you start, and then I'll just chime in on just with my horrible ideas as well.
All right. I don't know if my ideas are better, but we'll throw some out there. The number one theme when I think of vampires, whether it's in Vampire the Masquerade or it's in books, TV shows, movies, it's time. How long things happen, how long you've been around, when did things happen in the past, what's going to happen in the future. Time is this concept, and when you start talking about immortality, time becomes a very different concept. So we'll start with this concept. When were you turned, right? It's all well and good to say, oh, I want to be an ancient Egyptian who was turned 3,000 years ago, or even more than that, and I've survived all this time and I brought all this culture along with me. Cool. Lots of people like that. Lots of people love that power fantasy. I talked about it in the other video. What if you got turned in the 80s? What if you are stuck in that 80s mindset, in that 80s culture? What if you absolutely love the 80s? That's a cool character to play with. What if you got turned last week? What if you're a Zoomer? What if you love playing Fortnite and suddenly you're a vampire? You can only play matches at night, but you also have all of the current day culture that you bring to the table. That can be fun to play off of. That can be fun to riff off of.
Yep.
You can go a lot of different ways with how long ago you were turned, how long ago you became a vampire, and play around with, are you stuck in that moment when you used to be human?
Yep. No, I love it, and I guess it was funny because he told me about his idea for this, and I had kind of a reverse, I guess, meta wise. I was thinking of I have changed as a player from when I first started playing this game when I was 12, 13 years old, and I couldn't wait to grow up and be this like adult vampire, and it would be so cool, and I'd have all these powers. And now I'm an old man, and now I'm like, man, it would be cool to be 20 years younger and be able to have all these powers. I wouldn't be so achy in the mornings when I got up out of my coffin. So it's funny to see how I'm able to now look back at how good it would be to have this youth as a character versus how when I was younger I was looking forward to this adult who would have the power. So it's funny how we've changed that way and how it's changed my gameplay definitely of seeing what it would be like to be an immortal versus like a teenage immortal who maybe has now been a teenager for 40 years or you're a 40-year-old who's now stuck as a 40-year-old and is going to be a 40-year-old for the rest of time is the way he sees it and is like, oh man, that seems achy, that seems like it'd have a lot of aches and pains for me to be a 40-year-old for the next 200, 300 years. So that was the alternate version of yours of how it affects them. And sorry, one last thing is I also love to jump in, and I've been trying to figure out the best way to do a like vampire through time jump, get I guess one shot maybe, where you're like, okay, you start out as an Egyptian and move through time all the way to modern day and just kind of do these weird vignette stories every single time. Like, okay, we start in ancient Egypt, next we're in like like Renaissance France, then we jump to World War II, and then we jump forward to 80s 1980s New York City, and then to modern day. You still are the Egyptian teenager that you were, but are you able to adapt and look like not a you know 1200-year-old vampire, but instead be a 16-year-old, Zoomer who's able to function with technology and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much like Anne Rice interview with a vampire of seeing those different scenes throughout time, and they did the easy method. I shouldn't say easy. Anne Rice is a very or was a very good writer. Lots of people don't agree with some of her newer stuff. We can cut all of the things that I just said out of this video unless it plays funny.
Vampire Armand is the best.
Yeah, super super good. but you get these different scenes and you can tell different stories in different times, gives your players lots of opportunity to interact. And when you're thinking about interacting as a vampire, there's this interesting arc that happens, which we talked about a little bit before. When you turn into a vampire, you have this arc of, man, this is so cool. I have all these powers. I have all this cool stuff that I can do. And then the concept of immortality starts to set in. This concept of being the same for the rest of time sets in. And you suddenly have to deal with that. And there's a drop off that you have to figure out how you're going to continue to exist as the world continues to change, as the people around you grow old and die. You're not going to do that, and you have to deal with that. And I also thought it was interesting. I thought of Nosferatu as a clan kind of has a reverse arc there. As soon as they're turned, you're ugly, you're hideous, you're despicable, no one wants to be around you. But you kind of get to deal with that over time. Maybe you get a little bit more of a thick skin. You get used to people calling you out for how hideous you are all the time. And 50 years from now, the Queen of England could come down into your sewer and you're not going to bow down to her because you're the queen down there.
Yeah, this is my sewer, and I call the shots. So yes, totally agree. They definitely build that thick skin, or even like my Mr. Shark character, like an impervious to. He's almost oblivious to anything around him because of the fact that he's just happy to be an immortal. You know what I'm saying? Like he's just enjoying life and has now come out of his shell because of the disfigurement that caused him to have to become the monster that he is now.
I love playing with happy characters in dark settings. Yes. You can absolutely have happy moments, enjoyable moments. We talked about this a little bit with the Malkavians just kind of being eccentric, weird, asking for fish, asking for flowers, go down to Office Depot and press a button. Like you can have those fun, bright, exciting, interesting moments, and then you can contrast them with the dark, spooky, scary, soul-wrenching moments. Yes. And that's going to give your players that push and pull to emphasize both of those things. It doesn't have to be all dark and dreary all the time, because that's just going to get boring.
Yeah, and they have the touchstones, which are your family and friends, the ones who link you to your humanity. They are the ones that can point that out. They can be that contrast point of you're watching them get older and you're not. You're watching them, grow old and eventually possibly pass away, and you're losing that piece of your humanity from your touchstone passing, to where you're like, oh no, I have to link myself to another piece of life so that I can continue to not fall into a mega vampire depression. So that's definitely a piece of it, and they're good contrast. Using the touchstone that way is a great way to contrast that light and dark.
It's also a great way to set up a villain segue, because you can have NPCs who had those touchstones and lost them and never got that ability to reconnect, to ground themselves in reality, and they start to slip, they start to become monstrous, they start to become beastly, they start to lose that grip on humanity, and they start doing things that they would never have done in life or sane undeath.
Yeah. And that's what definitely, I guess, Josh, a friend of ours, played a character who was a Nosferatu, and he burned through his humanity points very quickly because he was the most murderous. Like, he would always volunteer to do the most heinous things that needed to be done. Unfortunately, I would put them in horrible situations where they're like, you're asking us to kill these people. And I'm like, no, I didn't say kill them. I just said make them go away. So, and he would just be like, I'll do it. And so I guess I would almost use his character, which was that Nosferatu, to come back later on as a bad guy, and so he can almost kind of run into yourself as he's a new fresh PC in another game, and he's going to run into himself as this player character who's lost their way and become the monster, and lost all of their humanity and become the main bad guy of the story.
When I think about really good bad guys, they're always motivated. They're always, like you said earlier, they think they're the good guy in the situation. And I think there's a really, I shouldn't say simple, there's a formula that you can do in Vampire that makes that a more easy process when you're trying to come up with a bad guy. And that's take the clan, take whatever that clan is known for, take whatever it is that they do that they're makes them special, and then twist that knob to 11 or 13 or 1000 and make them just over the top bonkers.
Yeah.
If they're Bruja, they are all about strength, proving strength, breaking everything, nothing, no law, no man, no beast, no vampire is ever going to beat me in strength. If they're Malkavian, they are dipping into unknown parts of reality that should never be explored, that other Malkavians have whispered about. We don't go there. We don't think about those things because it's too dangerous. Always try and give them something where they're fervent in their beliefs, almost a cult leader focused on the thing that made them who they were in Undeath.
Yeah, I love it. The extreme. They're going to take everything to the extreme, and it, I guess, to the point where they become the bad guy because of it.
It also gives them a really good opportunity to convert followers and get henchmen, because if people already believe that strength is the most important thing, they might start following the guy who says that strength is more important than existing. And now you've got a bunch of people who are willing to throw their undeath away to prove that this guy is the strongest.
Other villains that you can use are definitely the non-vampiric types, because the world of darkness is filled with all kinds of things, from werewolves to ghosts to hunters to humans. They are definitely in so many different factions of humans that would hunt down and kill a vampire for money or for faith or for true love or something like that. So there's so many reasons why humans want to kill them. But I love werewolves. That's what I definitely default towards as my like next. Other than vampires, the next thing they're going to fight most of the time is going to be a werewolf, because I love the fact that they kind of hold everything that's not in a city. They kind of hold the countryside, and then same thing for the ghosts. The ghosts have kind of, they can almost take over a city in some ways. They are very much vying for power in their own ways as much as possible, but it almost becomes a supernatural event. If a ghost can control a city, that whole city's gonna like come apart at the seams in reality wise. So them getting in control of the thing can almost be a like existential threat to the world or to a continent potentially, something like that. So I guess if you want to go really grand and big, you could go with like a ghost campaign where your PCs are trying to stop this entity that has become more and more powerful in the ghost realms. Um, any thoughts on alternate, I guess, beasts that aren't vampires out there?
I was going to say, interestingly enough, I think that humans are an awesome villain because you can do something really special, which you did in the campaign that you ran. Give your players a group of humans that come in and try and attack them, right? They know about vampires. They say, we're going to get rid of you, you stinking vampires, and let your players rip them to shreds because they're humans and the players are vampires, and they destroy them. And it's great and it feels good, and your players get to roll the dice and do cool things and use the powers. And then the human's boss show up, who's also a human, and he stands his ground against the vampires, and he shuts them down, and he uses powers, he uses artifacts, he uses knowledge, and suddenly it's, oh, we're not necessarily the top of the food chain. We're supposed to be, but there are people out there that are prepared for this, that are able to go toe-to-toe with us, and that's super intimidating.
Yeah, especially if they're doing it just through like pure, they're just a tactical genius. These guys are just like, Rainbow Six style, like they're great with a shot. They can take down vamps with headshots, things like that, where they're gonna be down for the count. You're not killing them, but if you're facing multiple vampire PCs and each one of them gets a headshot, after about the third guy going down and having to like recover from a brain wound, the other PCs are going to be like, oh no, maybe we should split, So yes, I love that, and it's a great way to run it, to make sure that the humans aren't just able to be just beat up all the time, stuff like that, to where you're piling like 20, 30 gunmen at them all the time and they're just ripping through them. So yes, definitely have the good ones. You also have mages, which is, there's a whole magic realm of mage, the in the world of darkness, and those mages are definitely another contender for controlling cities and things like that the vampires have to work around. And so these are humans who are sorcerers. They are bringing, they bring their own undead into the world, and then they do all kinds of rituals that may shut out vampire areas. And then, of course, you can always just have the political human who he's just the governor of the state, and he starts to move all of the blood banks out of your city using his own policies to, slowly starve you out to where all this he's using policy and administrations to hurt you. And so then you got to go deal with that because you can't just go assassinate the governor of a state that you have a city in that you control, because that would breach the masquerade. So therefore, you have to figure out how to politically deal with him as he slowly starts to strangle you by shutting down all the blood banks, moving all of the homeless population out of the cities, things like that, to make the city a better place, but also starve the vampires of their main sources of blood.
You also know that if they are making those power moves, getting rid of the things that you use on a daily or weekly basis to survive, that clearly the masquerade has been broken at some point. They know, which means they're also prepared, which means even if you do break into the office, you've got a fight ahead of you.
Yeah, they're waiting on you. If they know about you, they're not gonna just like walk around undefended. Definitely, they're gonna have their special ops groups that are protect them and things like that. And usually that means they're gonna be affiliated with the church, or a very powerful, like, I guess, governmental organization or something like that that's protecting humanity from vampires. Thank you guys for watching. Please let us know in the comments below what you liked and what you didn't like. Of course, we got the circles and squares popping up. Those are going to be the subscribe button down here with the circles, and then there's going to be the squares probably around my head area coming up pretty soon. Those are our other videos. We'd love for you to watch as many as you can and let us know what you think. Thanks, guys. We love you. Leland and Tim out.